Okay, so what if you found a message from the future? Not like way off in the distance, but just a couple of years from now. We've got this one fascinating little note, and it seems to point to a huge turning point for AI in 2026. So let's try and decode it, shall we?
And here it is. This is literally all we have to go on. Just one sentence, but it's full of excitement, right? Wow, that is an incredible set of updates for March 16, 2026. That's our hook. That's the whole mystery. So you gotta wonder, what in the world happened on that day to get someone so fired up? Let's dig in and find out.
So let's think of this as a dispatch, a message sent back from 2026. Our job here is to unpack it, to pull it apart, and see if we can piece together what it's really telling us about a huge moment in tech. Okay, so the date is obviously the big clue here. March 16th, but 2026. According to this little note, this is the day everything changes. But why? Why that specific day? That's the question we have to answer. And the note doesn't pull any punches, right? It calls it a massive turning point. That is a really bold claim. So, what could it be? Let's start breaking down the clues hidden inside this thing and see if we can solve the puzzle.
All right, our first clue, and it's a big one. It points to a really fundamental shift in what AI software even is. This, right here, is where the whole story of this turning point really kicks off. So check this out. The memo draws this really clear line in the sand. It says the whole industry is moving away from what it calls simple chatbots, the kind that just respond to what we type, and it's moving towards something totally new called agentic systems. Maybe think of it like this. It's the difference between a calculator and a full-on accountant. One is just a tool you use, but the other, well, the other is a worker that can pick up and use tools all by itself.
Yeah, so these agentic systems, they're not just like a slightly better chatbot. We're talking about a massive leap in what AI can actually do. It's not just about answering a question anymore. An agent can take that answer and then create a whole multi-step plan, go access other programs, and actually carry out really complex tasks with a surprising amount of autonomy. That is the real game changer here.
But of course, a software revolution this big, well, it's gotta have a hardware revolution to power it, right? You need the muscle. And our memo actually points us directly to the powerful new engines that are making all this possible.
And this is where it gets super specific. The note actually names two new NVIDIA platforms, Vera Rubin and NemoClaw. But it also throws in this one little technical detail about Vera Rubin that, well, it basically tells us everything we need to know about the insane amount of power we're talking about.
And that little detail? Liquid cooled. Now, that might sound like a bunch of tech jargon, but it's actually huge. See, you only need to start liquid cooling something when the normal fans just can't keep up with the amount of heat it's generating. So what that really signals is a massive, totally unprecedented jump in performance. We're talking about a whole new level of raw power.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got this new, almost autonomous software, and we've got this ridiculously powerful new hardware. So what happens when you put them together? Well, the memo says they create something it calls a new strategic capability. Let's see what that means.
And here's the formula, laid out perfectly. You take the advanced software, these agentic systems, and then you run them on that next-gen, super powerful hardware, like the Vera Rubin platform. And what do you get? You get a completely new idea, sovereign AI factories.
So, sovereign AI factories. That's what you get when these two things come together. And just think about that name for a second. It's pretty wild. Sovereign, that suggests a whole new level of independence, right? Of self-governance for these AI systems. And then factories, that makes you think of these powerhouses of production, just churning stuff out. But churning out what exactly? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
All right, so we've got all the pieces of the puzzle. But why? Why does the memo insist that this specific moment is the one that changes everything? What is it about this particular combination that makes it the turning point? Well, one thing is for sure. Whoever wrote this memo didn't see this as just another product launch or some small upgrade. To them, this was a fundamental, totally game-changing event for the entire industry. No question about it. And, with that kind of power comes, well, a whole new level of risk. The memo is really explicit about this. It directly connects the rise of these sovereign AI factories to big new cybersecurity challenges. And it makes sense, right? Because when an AI starts to get more autonomous, more sovereign, it's going to create all new kinds of vulnerabilities and threats that we've never even had to think about before.
And that really leaves us with the core idea of this whole memo. And it's a little unsettling, to be honest. This idea of sovereign AI. As we're building these incredibly powerful, independent factories that can just operate on their own, you have to ask yourself, what happens when the things we create don't need us anymore? Maybe that's the real turning point that this message from 2026 is trying to warn us about.